Questions? Yes, sir. We have mics. Hold on. Christina is running over a mic to you. Megan also can run a mic. Hang on. Yes, Mike? No, Mike? There we go. Thanks, Christina.
2 seconds, so sorry.
There you go.
Well, what is your position on restoring Glass-Steagall, the 1933 Great Depression era legislation that separated commercial banking from investment banking, with all of this speculation going with the investment banks?
You know, I think we can do a lot better in America in 2010 than to have to go back almost a century to Depression-era policy. We can do better than that. Yes. But let me tell you, of course we have to reform Wall Street. Let me tell you what just happened in Washington, D.C. It's typical politics. We had 20+ agencies that were charged with minding the story. 20+ agencies had oversight on Wall Street. The SEC among them, you know, the SEC failed to catch Bernie Madoff despite warnings over many years. 20+ agencies were supposed to be doing that, they didn't. And we also had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who still own 52% of the nation's mortgages. They are in conservatorship to the American taxpayer with no ceiling, no limit. But you know what Barbara Boxer and her colleagues did? They said, in typical Washington fashion, never mind those 20+ agencies that failed to do their job. We're not going to hold anybody accountable. Never mind Fannie and Freddie Mac and the burden that they represent to the American taxpayer. No, we're going to create a new agency called the Consumer Protection Agency. And we're going to ask bureaucrats who are nameless and faceless and accountable to no one to write 533 new regulations. And oh, by the way, President Obama just appointed, in a recess appointment, a new head of the Consumer Protection Agency. That's what we just did. That's what we just did. We must reform Wall Street, and in my opinion, it starts with some real fundamentals. Let's make sure that there is transparency on Wall Street. The reality is, leading up to this crash, probably almost 75% of the capital flows running around through Wall Street were totally opaque. Nobody knew what collateralized debt obligations were. Nobody knew what half of the capital flows were. They all need to be transparent. And then let's deal with accountability. I have said publicly that any CEO who accepts the taxpayer bailout should immediately tender their resignation and the resignation of their entire board, because they have failed in their own.
Here you go, here's some other. Actually, right behind you.
May I call you Carly, or
Absolutely.
you prefer ma'am?
Carly, would you consider running an ad that pointed out to Senator Boxer that when you were the CEO of Hewlett Packard, that your constituency was your shareholders and your obligation was to them? That as a senator from this great state, your constituents would be the voters, that you represent their best interests, and that the environment that Democratic governments, largely their rules, laws, have put us into such a non-competitive situation that we could bring jobs back to California. Would you run that ad?
It may not be exactly those words, but yeah, we'll run that ad. It
Thank you.
basically says, look, we can compete, we must compete. And the reason Intel, Apple, Cisco, Microsoft are sending jobs outside this nation and outside the state is because of the policies that Barbara Boxer represents and supports. And yes, a CEO of a public company is accountable to shareholders, and an elected senator is accountable to voters. And I go up and down this state, and every day I hear the story from people who say, she hasn't been here, she won't work our issues, we don't even bother to try and engage her because she doesn't work for us. And I have heard the story every day as well of people who have traveled the long 3,000 miles to Washington, D.C. to seek an audience with her, and she will not even meet with them. Barbara Boxer when she dressed down that general. Okay? The truth is, what is most important to Barbara Boxer, the reason people are tired of career politicians like Barbara Boxer, what is most important to her is her title, her perk, her position. What's most important to me is the people of California, and let's get some stuff done.
Hi, Carly. Just recently, the DREAM Act just went down in flames, and most likely be back within the next 2 years, also with amnesty. What are your views on both? Thank you.
So I don't support amnesty in any form. I think the federal government has two jobs, and they have failed in both. The first and most important job of the federal government is to protect the nation, and that means secure the border. We have murder and mayhem being committed along our southern border with Mexico. You've heard this horrible, awful story of 72 people being lined up and executed miles from our border. You perhaps have heard the stories about what is going on in Monterrey, Mexico. I have traveled to Monterrey many times. It is a beautiful city. It was, in many ways, the business capital of Mexico. And now people are being beheaded. People are being hung from bridges. Think about that. It would be like the city of Los Angeles or Orange County having people hanging from bridges. I bring all this up because Mexico is in danger almost of becoming a failed state. That's the definition when a government cannot control the situation. And they are on our border. We must secure the border. I met in Iraq. About immigration, although yes, it's about that, it's about national security. I met an Iraqi war veteran the other day at a tea party in Clovis, and he told me he had been to Iraq 3 times. And when he came home, he wanted to go hunting in Mendocino County. And he was told by the law enforcement personnel in Mendocino County, we suggest you don't hunt here, we can't keep you safe. There are drug cartels from Mexico growing marijuana in Mendocino County, and we can't vouch for your safety. Or when I meet with the sheriffs in Fresno County, they tell me, Carly, the drug war is here. Mr. President, secure the border. I want to say one other thing, though. By the way, Barbara Boxer's response to this crisis is to vilify the people of Arizona. That's what it is. But let me tell you something. The federal government has another job as well, and it's a very important job for the state of California. The government needs to have a temporary worker program that works. Our farmers depend upon it. Our restaurants depend upon it. This isn't about amnesty. It's not about illegal immigrants. It's about people legally being able to work here, and they have failed in that regard as well. So we need the federal government to do both of those things, and it is the crassest form of politics to hold national security and border security hostage, to hold the temporary worker program hostage. And what has Barbara Boxer done on that score?
Nothing.
Well, I'll tell you, no, it's worse than nothing. It's worse than nothing. There was a guest worker program on the table, not amnesty, a guest worker program on the table in 2007. It failed by 1 vote. Guess whose vote it was, and guess what she said when she cast that deciding vote? That immigrants form a source of cheap labor that threatens the American worker. She was talking for union leadership. She was not talking for the hardworking people of California. Yes, sir. Sorry. You were next, sir. Sorry. And I'll come right back to it. It's hard. Yes, sir.
Can you give me some ideas of how you can hold these people accountable? Everybody in the room knows it's long overdue. What are you going to do?
Well, Let's start with what are we going to do? The first thing we are going to do is vote Barbara Boxer out of office. Let's not underestimate what we just said. Barbara Boxer has been elected and re-elected and re-elected. That is how she has been there for 28 years. So there are many things we can do to hold people accountable, including improving transparency of every single dollar that is being spent in Washington, D.C., and changing the questions that we ask on Capitol Hill. But first, we have to change the people we send. And to defeat Barbara Boxer on November 2nd is going to take each and every one of you, talking to everyone you know, to say, now is the time to take our government back, make it listen, make it work, hold it accountable. We gotta send different people to Washington. Let's not jump over that big, important step. But you get accountability with transparency. What are people doing? How are they spending money? How are they voting? And let's hold it up